Hello and welcome to the Sunset Stream for the Distributist for April 26th, 2022. So tonight I don't really have a prepared theme. One of the main reasons why I don't was because I was pretty sick over the weekend, as you might tell from the voice, if you indeed are hearing me. And I wasn't even sure if I'd have enough vocal energy to get through an hour of stream where I was just talking by myself. But since I did a pretty successful stream with my friend Aaron McIntyre on Sunday, I felt I could probably get through an hour or so of questions, although I didn't really want to prepare anything. So hopefully people will ask me questions. I could always talk about the news events that have happened this week. The main one has been that Elon Musk has bought Twitter, which is what all the leftists are freaking out about. The problem is there's really almost nothing to say about that at this point, other than the fact that obviously this is a win for the counter-progressive forces online. But that being said, people are really struggling to figure out how to use this victory, at least in our spheres. I think what people are realizing is that although Twitter is a powerful tool and it's now more available to distance than it ever has been, there probably will not be the mass bannings to nearly the extent that there was for the last 3 years. So we might be going back to 2015 level policies on Twitter. Although that might be the case, the question is really what use can we make of it on the distant right? Even if people do come back in force, I don't think we'll ever be able to shout louder than the left. I just don't think that that's useful. And people are very aware of the corrosive effects of Twitter on people's psychologies. I certainly don't want to come back. Well, I'm kind of an exception. I wasn't banned. I left because of the fact that I could feel Twitter was decreasing my focus on other things. And I didn't like that. And it was also, there was really, I don't know, I was getting involved, like there were a bunch of really creepy cancel vultures that were kind of following on my heels that I didn't really want to have any contact with anymore. So it seemed like a good time to cut the line for the whole Twitter thing. I remember Millennial Woes, he was talking about the other day, and he's right. It almost doesn't seem worth it. You're competing for sort of a populist voice with the assumption that you know that they're not going to ban you as hard as they did in 2019 and 2020, but you're probably not going to get the kind of help the left does. And in some sense, you're submitting to their frame. I don't know, maybe new right-wing Zoomers can try to take advantage of this. So guys, I'm going to try to be making copious usage of the mute button so that I'm not coughing into the microphone. Again, thank you for being understanding on this one. This is not going to be my most energetic live stream of all time because talking continuously for an hour and a half is going to be a little bit difficult. So I appreciate your understanding, and we'll just go from there. A few other things have happened. Well, there was the whole Florida crackdown on Disney, which I found was, a lot of people were making a lot more of this than I think actually. I don't think that that's such an attack on Disney. Losing that particular tax set aside, that's not that much of a loss for Disney. The real pony in this attack against Disney and corporations like them would be to go after IP. IP is what grants the legacy and prestige media its advantage over independent media. And as long as IP laws are in effect, and here the principal actor that keeps them in effect is Disney, as long as that is the game we're playing, any kind of alternative media is going to have a distinct disadvantage without a large amount of funding from basically the cathedral or its allies. Yeah. So sorry again. I'll mute myself whenever I have a cough coming on. But yeah, I don't know. And I don't know. People have been talking about attacking Disney's IP, but that seems to be a little bit further from the grasp of anything the right wing could do right now. It's much further away. Oh, I forgot. I forgot that last week, that the last live stream I did was the response to Adam and Sitch, and that's kind of funny. It brought me back to Twitter because for about a week afterwards, Adam and Sitch were just completely spurging out on Twitter over our interaction. They did their own Tuesday stream in which they recapped our talk, and I think very few of their restatements of my positions were accurate. But I finally try to nail Sitch down on his own statements, and it just becomes this complete comedy of errors where he tries to continuously ask me for links back to where he defended affirmative action and blah 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 blah, and eventually try to steelman him, saying, I ask Adam and Sitch, is this what you believe, that you're against affirmative action, you're against disparate impact, you're against protected classes, and you want to de-wokify the universities, and you think that a small or moderate change to government could accomplish that? And Adams just completely loses it and says, no, that's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, but where did I get wrong? If those four statements are ridiculous, then does that mean you disagree with them? Or do you agree with all of them and you just don't like the words I used? So I see more people talking about the Fuentes versus Medicare. I don't know, did anything really come of that? It felt like a big drama thing. It felt like a big hullabaloo about really nothing. I know a lot of people that believe that Nick has been discredited and that this is sort of his last hurrah. I really don't see that at all. It's Nick is a survivor. I've been thinking that he's been on his way out for 3 years, but of course I've been thinking that about Vosh too, and he never goes away either. There's one thing we've learned about internet streamers is that they're incredibly resilient in a way that old school video makers just aren't, like myself. I say old school video makers, not. I mean, I feel kind of weird saying old school. I mean, 2015, that's old school now. Well, okay, so I'm getting questions now, so I'll just answer them. If you want to give me a super chat and guarantee that your question will be answered, you can. Ooh, I already have some. Someone's asking me if they've seen before I get started on the super chats, someone's asking me if I've seen the Bosch versus Professor Flowers drama. I mean, I have. Isn't that like a year old now? I mean, that's not new news. That's been going on for the better half of 2020. Well, it was really a 2021 thing, right? The thing is that Bosch knows what his product is. His product is to sell young white men on leftism. That's his business model. And if he can't do that, then he has a problem. And the thing is that what the wokies do, and the reason why the sort of dirtbag left doesn't like wokies, is they make it very, very clear that they want to actively disrespect white men for being white, and they want to humiliate them. And I said this to Aaron McIntyre. Part of my red pilling process was realizing after Obama won that humiliation was literally part of the product of leftism. There was a huge percentage of their coalition that just wanted to see Republicans and conservatives humiliated. And the thing is that Professor Flowers isn't going to let white men like Vosh stand up on a soapbox and be part of a debate about principle and consistency. If they do that, the game is up. So there's a natural conflict there. I don't know. I think that the problem is that to bury this, because the more it goes on, the more they could lose power, right? The more something could blow up in their faces. Professor Flowers could, I mean, the way it would blow up for Vosh is that he could say something racist and get canceled. And the way that it would blow up for Professor Flowers is she would say something incredibly, egregiously stupid, and she would be exposed in that moment as being an absolute midwit who was wielding an academic position that she had really no right to wield given her limited abilities of critical thinking. And so both parties want to make this conflict. They have to come into conflict because both of them sell the humiliation of the other as part of their leftism. Both of them tell their audiences that come the revolution, your worldview is going to be on top of theirs. But it doesn't behoove them to keep the conflict going very, very much, because the more they say, the more it could explode in their faces. And that kind of happened to Vosh too. Remember the whole interaction between Vosh and, who was the... I forget, he got into some conflict with J.K. Rowling, that's it. He got into a conflict with J.K. Rowling. And he said something that was egregiously stupid. And I don't know if it cost him that much, but it certainly made him look like an idiot and really limited his reach to a more mainstream leftist audience. Because most mainstream leftists believed in that moment that he was an incredible liability and may have been convinced of that for the foreseeable future. So, I don't know, but does that mean that Vosh is going away? Of course not, because someone needs to be able to... I mean, leftism is ascendant, and young people want to be on the winning side of a conflict. Why wouldn't you? And so young white men are really, really willing to buy illusions that if the form of their leftism was correct, they could get around all of this shit, and they could get to fully luxury, gay-space communism, and they could have their porn and video games, and also the happily ever after, whatever that means. And they could be on the good and winning side too. And that's what Vosh sells them to a certain extent. He sells them the illusion that leftism works for his demographic. And in some sense, that's one, the sort of key element to all social media personalities. And, I hope this isn't true about myself. I guess because I'm smaller, it isn't. But the key to most social media personalities is that their success itself is part of their product. Part of their product is that they deliver entertaining and insightful content. That's one thing. But the other thing is that it's popular. When you consume this product, a lot of other people are consuming this product. And therefore, when you hop on the bandwagon, you're part of this thing. And that's very much what Vosh is. Vosh is popular because he's popular. People say he's the greatest debater of all time or something like that. That's his self-claimed moniker. That's true because his fans say that it's true. It's sort of like that Warhammer 40K type deal. The whole idea that orc technology only works because they believe it works. Well, if your audience believes that you win every debate despite how much you're humiliated, then that's to a certain extent true on social media. And that's how these social media personalities can become they can become popular and sort of beloved independent of the content or the quality of their content. I think Hassan might be even a better example of this. But yeah, that's Sorry, I had to periodically mute myself as disclosed previously. You can tell that I have a frog in my throat, but... someone's asking me if the rights totally lost the thread when it comes to the student debt issue. Well, I mean, what does that mean, right? The student debt issue... The biggest problem with college student debts is that they're being issued, and that because what the student debt issue is currently is, will the taxpayer pay for college debt of rich white college students? Like that's how it's framed currently, and the problem is that because we're in inflation, it's becoming increasingly obvious that the government's not this infinite money machine. So if we put like trillions of dollars to absorb the debts of the upper middle class, that's going to come out of taxpayers' pockets, and it's going to come out of the inflation too. So that's the way it's framed currently. It's just kind of insane. The way ideally I would handle it, and I've said this many times, is you need to essentially put the college debt back on the universities and start forcing them to liquidate to pay off the college debt that they sold America's young people. Now, I mean, the problem is, in order to do that, you'd have to have a certain amount of political will. that's far in excess to anything that we've seen so far coming out of the right. It's just not been, we've not been there yet. So, I mean, sure, like, in theory, great, I'm very much for college debt forgiveness, as long as it's accompanied by some plan to stop issuing this bad debt, and as long as we recuperate the expense of this debt, not from the lower classes in the form of inflation, but from literally liquidating the institutions that have created this debt to begin with. That has to be part of the conversation. You know, this people give me this is what's, I don't never understood this, is that people always say when I talk about Adam and Sitch, they say I'm obsessed. When I talk about Vosh, they say I'm obsessed. When I talk about ContraPoints, they say I'm obsessed. Or Faraday Speaks, or any of these people, any of these, or Thought Slime, or Demon Mama. The left has to be part of the conversation, guys. The immediate ideological rivals online, they have to be part of the conversation, because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm communicating with you on this medium of YouTube. It's a streaming medium. It's a medium that is social media. I have to address my immediate rivals to my center and my left. If I don't do that, I don't think I'm actually doing this properly. I think that a lot of people, maybe this is actually, I guess the critique isn't completely lost on me. I think the idea is that people like Academic Agent, they to a larger degree just don't mention these bad actors, and they prefer to more or less concern themselves with more academic topics. And that's fine. You know, probably if I had more time and did this professionally, I might try to do something like that. But, you know, right now at least, what I have is I have what's going on in the world, what's true, good, and beautiful, what's going on in the world, and then how it's being reacted to in social media. And I don't see how the center and the left don't play a role in that. We might think that they're stupid. Well, I think they are kind of, not stupid, but it seems like they're very much blinded by self-interest and ideology. So, but even so, they still have to be part of the conversation. They still have to be part of what we're doing here. So, with that, I think I'll get on to the super chats. Hopefully, now, finally, this comment pinning system is working. I'm going to be very disappointed if it's not. Okay, thank you. Eventually, I'm going to actually put some investment in getting my OBS system perfectly working. I'm going to make an intro video, and I'm going to have a setup for when I use my face and when I don't, and so that I can do this without an extended setup. Right now, I'm in the process of another move. I'm obviously not at the top of my game in terms of health, as you can hear from my voice. I've got a huge frog in it. But I do want to make these streams as good as they possibly can be, because I want this to be part of my regular internet content that I produce on a weekly basis. Part of me wants to just always guarantee that I'll have a live stream like this on Tuesdays. Right now, what's happened is that I've felt free to use Tuesday nights as something that I can schedule over. So I'm always streaming on Tuesdays, but I might be on someone else's channel or something else like that. Aristocratic Owl for $3 USA. What do you think of Elon Musk's bid for Twitter? And do you think this will be a serious benefit for the right? Well, I mean, I already sort of almost answered this. I'll try to answer it a little bit better. I think that, I mean, it's more just it hurts the left more than it helps the right. To be quite honest, it hurts the left because they're gonna lose their ever loving shit, first of all, which they already have done. And this creates a position where they're essentially going to be becoming more and more unhinged online. If a bunch of people come on who are more interested in doing this edgelord stuff from 2015, you could see some serious overreactions from the left that could cause them to nuke their own social media presence. Now, I mean, does this help the right? I guess by definition, anything that hurts the social media effectiveness of the left helps the right. If the social media left becomes less able to cancel people on Twitter, that helps the right. If the left becomes less well organized, that implicitly helps the right. But that's not, I mean, the right doesn't need to have the left fail. I mean, it does need to have the left fail, don't get me wrong. But the real thing that people are waiting for the right is to show some amount of organization and some idea of the directions people could go in that are not left wing. So, I mean, I think it's more on us. And the problem is that I don't think Twitter is a good place to construct that. Twitter can create populist outrages, but it can't create coherent thoughts. And right now, what the right needs to convince the rest of the world is that it has a coherent vision of the future. And short of that, it's not really helping itself. So, yeah, it hurts the left, not help the right. It hurts the left and therefore only implicitly helps the right, would be my general take. I mean, somewhere out there's probably an enterprising alpha or a Zoomer who wants to sort of be the next Nick Fuentes and who's willing to just jump in with both feet into the new Twitter. If you're that Zoomer or alpha, I don't like to use the word alpha, but you know, the generation after the Zoomers. If you're one of those young folks who's interested in doing that, you know, more power to you, but I have to issue you a really big caution. You know that Twitter is addictive, and you know that it kills your attention span, and you know that it is dopamine crack. This has a serious psychological impact on your perception of reality and your perception of self-importance and your ability to focus on things, and it's addictive. So when you're using this substance, you have to be able to understand how to use it responsibly. I think very few people have. I think, you know, millennial woes back in the day got horribly addicted to Twitter by his own admission. Now, I know my friend Aaron McIntyre seems to have, I don't know this for a fact, but in sort of private conversations, he's led me to believe that he has a system, pardon me, he's led me to believe that he has a system that he set up to sort of guard himself against these psychological pitfalls involved in Twitter. And again, if you're a Zoomer, then you need to start thinking in this direction because, or again, if you're a Zoomer and you want to do right-wing Twitter, because it might now be possible. You have to also consider the very real possibility that Elon Musk takes over this company and he takes over this company. That's not the end of the story. He still has to deal with lawsuits. He still has to deal with a billion other things. I mean, he deals with the same oligarchy everyone else does. And so he might keep the censorship teams in place. He might not encourage them. He might not feed them. He might tell them privately, tone it down, guys. I don't want to see people like the Babylon Bee get banned. But that's not going to help you if you're trying to be Nick Fuentes 2.0. So I think I'll call that question finished. Is there another one by Aristocratic Owl? Okay. Aristocratic Owl for $10. Last super chat from me for the night. What is your favorite American? Well, okay, hold on. This is I'm asking this out of order, but I'll just paraphrase this by saying the second to last super chat from me tonight. What is your favorite American WASP literature? And could you please explain why it's one of your favorites? American WASP literature. I mean, the obvious... I mean, I talked about this book before, so I feel bad talking about it now. But I'm tempted to say... Moby Dick. I mean, Moby Dick's a great... I mean, Moby Dick, in my opinion, Moby Dick is the great American novel. Now, the obvious rival is Mark Twain's Huck Finn, I think. Some people say The Great Gatsby. But you might notice a pattern here is that you might notice that this is kind of slim pickings. If we were to go to British literature, there would be a lot more rivals for novels. If you were to go for Russian novels, there'd be a lot more rivals for great great WASP American novel. I'm partial to Hemingway, but does he count? I believe he was a WASP. He was also kind of a lefty, and he's also a thoroughly modern writer. There's also Cooper's Last of the Mohicans, which is kind of not a very serious book, but one that I like. I'm trying to think about it's specifically American literature. I mean, does H.P. Lovecraft count? I feel like Fritz Imperial he said he was really getting into the WASP American literature, but oh man, it's now kind of hard for me to. I kind of want to look great American novels. I kind of want to look at a list here. Let's see what the great American novels are if I put this into the Google machine. Great American novels you should read by Penguin Books. And let's just see. I wonder if it's going to be a bunch of diversity picks. Well, it can't all be. First one, Moby Dick, of course. Uncle Tom's Cabin, which is pro-slavery propaganda. Then there's, right up front, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and The Great Gatsby. 1, 2, 3. Right. And this is a bunch of... okay. Yeah, so I should have mentioned this, but there's also John Steinbeck. I'm not a really big John Steinbeck fan, I don't really... I kind of liked Of Mice and Men, but I've only kind of liked it. The other one I really liked was The Pearl, and I wasn't really partial to The Grapes of Wrath. It wasn't really my thing so much. So, I don't know. It's, wow, there's 5 things on this. So it's the 4 great novels, and then there's then there's a bunch of diversity selections like Toni Morrison and stuff like that. John Steinbeck. Someone also, so here's another one. Ray Bradbury is apparently showing up on these lists, and that's another one where very waspy science fiction writer. He's kind of like the anti-H.P. Lovecraft, where he's this thoroughly American kind of WASP tradition writer. He's pastoral, he's idyllic, he's got creepy stories every now and again, but they're almost always buttressed in his short story collections by something that's more encouraging. Now Jack London appears. God, I guess I just have very, very low opinions of all of these books. Yeah, or Catcher in the Rye, or Catch-22, 2 catches. I guess I just have very low opinions about these books. I mean, so I could say Catcher in the Rye is a book, but it's more about an era of American life in the immediate post-war, and it's very, very hard to see how that world's relevant to ours. Catch-22 is a delightfully comic novel about the war itself from a very waspy perspective. I don't know. I don't consider these to be great novels because they all just seem to be good stories, but they don't seem to be particularly earth-shattering. I think it's very hard to come up with a better novel than Moby Dick, Great Gatsby, and Huckleberry Finn. I'm really drawing a blank. Okay, well, hopefully that answers the question to a certain extent. So let's try this one. Hopefully we'll keep on going with this successful comment pitting. Aristocratic Owl, for the actual last comment, do you think consolidating power locally is the best step forward for the right? If so, how would you go about it? I'm currently getting in contact with the local commissioner of the county next to mine. Well, I think that getting power locally is obviously good, but I think that just being financially secure is probably better. Local power is good, but the thing is that I told this to Oren McIntyre, right? If we're all Schmidians and power is about rewarding friends and punishing enemies, local power is always going to be inferior to that which stands above it. So if you have a way to benefit it from it personally, if you have a way to make connections, make friends, build networks in the local power scene, I would totally do that. But I wouldn't, if you're just a slave for a local politician to get that politician elected and you're not building relationships among your town councilors, or you're not becoming a person who's well known within whatever party you're working for, I would kind of take a step back here. The policy, the lower down you get, the less impactful the literal policies or laws are. So if you're doing local politics, you build relationships, build relationships, build relationships. As people have said in recently, the person who said this to me was Closington. It reminded me of a piece of perennial folk wisdom. And that is, it's not exactly true, but your net worth is your network. It's not exactly true. There's many antisocial people who've been very wealthy. But generally, if you have a strong network, that provides sort of a nice little floor for how low your net worth can slide, because eventually someone's going to offer you a job. So I would use local government more as a networking opportunity, and I would kind of lean on it that way rather than, definitely don't do something like a get out the vote campaign. Local politics should all be about getting in contact with influential people who can help you out in real life and who you can help out in real life. And, maybe if you're a young man, you might be able to meet a woman in that context as well. And I think women are a lot more interested in sort of single issue, personal interest politics. And local politics is all about personal interest politics. So, yeah, I would do it, but I would consider it more of a vocation and a profession, or maybe a productive hobby, and don't think of it as consolidating power. The way you consolidate power is by building the network, and then hopefully that network will help you if you want to take it higher. You can if you build a network of local Republicans, you can go to CPAC and then be someone important at CPAC, or you can go to your state government or federal government and be someone who's relatively important, at least distinguished in those contexts. So I would say focus on sort of what it's delivering into your life. Don't be under. There's no way you can stack local power and have it overwhelm federal power. That doesn't happen. So just be aware of that limitation, if you may. Okay, so I'm gonna start from the bottom now, with the understanding that the bottom is where this stuff is actually. Okay, are we pinning this still? I'm very disappointed that my comments are no longer pinning. Well, Numbtooth Bum for $10 USA. So I guess is this the problem? Is the problem that Entropy doesn't pin them when they get past a certain point in the chat? That's really bad, because my whole thing is that I pin the super chats. So I'll have to find another way of doing this. Maybe I can. I'll mess around with it. But my apologies if your chat isn't appearing. But here it goes anyway. Numbtooth Bum for $10. My uncle has asked for my input, spending 2M on Catholic Ed, K-12. So spending $2 million on Catholic Ed, K through 12. Goal is less people leaving church in college. Current plan is to send missionary teachers into local Catholic high schools, who, by power of charisma, stem the tide. Many problems with this. Can you think of a better plan? Well, having good high school teachers is always really important. But I mean, you're asking me to think of a better plan. That's a hard thing for Catholics. The big leaky pipe for Catholics leaving the church happens in college, and then immediately after college before marriage. Those are the two leaky, and really actually the right after college, because if you go to college and you have a successful Newman Center, then it's really when the community falls through. So the most important thing, just from a personal level, that keeps people in their faith is to know adults who they respect, who pray regularly, and who have religion as an important aspect of their lives. If this is impressed upon children at a young age, then they will persist in their interest in faith and their respect for faith throughout their entire lives, even if they have a falling away in terms of doubt. Now, the problem is that I don't know how you can dump $2 million on that problem, because that gap period that is the most leaky pipeline of getting people from childhood to adulthood, that's the moment of least institutionalization you can imagine. And the reason why it's such a leaky pipeline is it's also the period of time where these kids spend the majority of their lives inside blue areas. Now, I don't know. I don't know if this could work, but I'm wondering if there couldn't be some kind of alternative to the Knights of Columbus, some kind of youth group for young people inside major urban areas that could act as social groups, as dating groups, as faith groups for young 20-something Catholics, sort of like a Newman Center, but for all young professionals who are Catholic and who go through a process. Again, this would probably take way more than the amount of money you have to spend on it. But if I were thinking in the direction of trying to buttress people in their faiths, it's really that period where you're isolated and in cities. That's the real thing that needs support. And the thing is that young people really want that. They really want tight connections. They really want places where they can meet future husbands, future wives. That's sort of pre-approved. If there was an organization that required moral standards for young people and engaged in social activities, again, I know Knights of Columbus kind of does this. I know that some organizations kind of do this, but if they could do it better, that would probably help more than I do think Catholic high school teachers are very important. Okay, so this one should be pinning now. Okay, Hominid Ape, I think your Dune discussion pardon me. Hominid Ape, I think your Dune discussion stream a while back, someone brought up the Book of the New Sun. That's funny, I don't remember discussing Dune. Not recently, at least. I did a review of the Dune movie. Any plans on discussing the Book of the New Sun in the future? I just finished it recently, and it's fantastic. I would love to hear your take on it sometime. Well, I do love it. The problem is I think that very few people are going to get anything out of that book because it's really inaccessible. It's the image of the future it has, which is gothic and rich and dark. It feels like a predecessor to 40K, but more based in some sense, weirdly. And I love the image of the world, the fact that you're peering into this future that's so distant from us that the linguistic categories don't really make any sense anymore. So you're aware that there is a quadruped animal that carries people around, and it's called a destrider, which you assume looks like a horse, but you're told by the author that a destrider is not actually a horse, it's some other evolved animal. And so your imagination is left to fill in the details. Another interesting feature of this Book of the New Sun, or at least the first four, is that the protagonist, who's called Severian, who he's a torturer who beheads people, which the name Severian is evocative in that dimension. His sword's called Terminus Est, which is "This is the end," a very Doors-like named sword. You know from the beginning that he's crazy, and so he's an unreliable narrator, and he's going through a world that is so we're told it's a rational world, and we have no reason to believe it's a non-rational world, but it's so distant from us in time that you're not aware of what the actual constraints would be. So what proceeds is this really unstable narrative where something crazy happens, like a remarkable situation happens, like someone dies and comes back to life, and you don't know, like, okay, is this a function of this crazy future universe? Is this guy going insane? Is this just how things work in the future? Is this actual magic? And so you're constantly trying to figure out, how surprised should I be about this? Is the protagonist surprised? Are the people around him surprised? And for me and for people who really want to think about science fiction books, this kind of complete bafflement, when both the setting around you is sort of indistinct and hard to put your finger on, and sort of the rules it operates by is also hard to put your finger on. That's a really fun intellectual problem for me. And the fact that the image of the Book of the New Sun series is the images it evokes are so evocative and gothic. It's really delicious. The problem is this will translate horribly for most normies. Most normies want to understand the stakes of what's going on. And I don't know if this is really a criticism, because there's no way that you could do this and also make it so deliciously surreal. But you go through that entire series not knowing, you vaguely understand what the cosmic stakes are in this vague sense. You have this sort of Spenglerian understanding that there are these stakes going on. But it's totally unclear who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, what they want, what they can get, what they can't get, what the suspense is. And if you're reading this like a novel, like Lord of the Rings, that is going to drive you up the wall. So, I would be aware of recommending that to normies. But it's a good book, not for the faint of heart, though. Rig-O-Matic C. I won't be able to watch live. However, what do you think of the Daily Wire's $100 million investment into creating its own animation and story content? Is it something you'd be interested in joining with them? Well, to be quite honest, not really, actually, because the Daily Wire likes appealing. This is almost literally the flip side of the last question. The Daily Wire wants to create animation and story content for normies. When they say animation, what they're going to want to create is like Disney, but not Disney. And hey, that's fine, right? You want to... And I would actually be really game for that. If you could tell me a fairy tale and make it animated and give it good music, I'd really like that. Does anyone... I don't want to wax nostalgic here, but does anyone remember the 80s? There were all of these animation companies. Don Bluth was one of them. Warner Brothers was doing this. There are all these cell animation companies that were doing good work. I remember one animation doesn't quite hold up. It's The Last Unicorn, which is a beautiful book. If you ever want to read the actual book, I don't remember who the author is off the top of my head. But it's a beautiful book, kind of like The Princess Bride. Think of like that, the young adult fiction type deal. And they did a beautiful animation, which had a bunch of actors in it. And I say it doesn't hold up because the animation, while it's brilliant, is a little schizophrenic. They can't decide whether they're marketing for adults or children. And so they oscillate between the two of them. They go really, really dark, and then they go really, really stupid. And the voice actors, they actually have musical numbers in it. And the they just have the voice actors sing, and they're literally hitting they're literally hitting sour notes on a dub over. It's almost embarrassing. So I would be game for when the Daily Wire produces its fairy tale animation, right? I remember in the 90s they did a George MacDonald Princess and the Goblin animation as well. That was one of the last non-Disney cel animations I ever saw. But if they did things like that, if they did Thumbelina or Swan Lake, and they made that into a Disney movie extravaganza, that would be brilliant. I would love that if they did that tastefully. But really, for myself, what I'm interested in is sort of the wacky stuff. I'm interested in the Bronze Age mindset. I'm interested in art that looks like the Book of the New Sun. I mean, that's the culture that's available to us right now, is sort of the stuff that's not going to appeal to everyone. The stuff that by its very adventurous nature can't appeal to everyone. And so, that's sort of more how I'm thinking right now. Although, if they come out with a particularly beautiful version, if they come up with like an animated Joan of Arc would kind of be stupid. But I'm trying to think of a good story. I guess if they did Anastasia, they could do Joan of Arc. But if they did some kind of like medieval fantasy, if they redid Robin Hood in animated form, or if they redid King Arthur, that'd be a great one. Like a King Arthur animated thing for young adults, and it wasn't insulting to people's intelligences. As a consumer, with a young child, I'll be all over that. As a producer of culture, I know the kind of people that the Daily Wire targets, and they are not my demo. Not my demo. They're targeting Red America, and I'm targeting Blue. So, excuse me. The Traditionalist. I was very happy to see you and Aaron together. I would like a reunion. Of master and student. I found him through his guest video. What more can be done to foster a mentorship based on your experience? Well, I guess guest videos wouldn't be a bad idea. I guess guest videos wouldn't be a bad idea if... The problem is that towards the end of the guest video things, I was kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, and people were submitting stuff to me that I really wasn't in the mood to publish guest videos, and it's always really hard when there's just an open invitation and people make something and you had to turn them down. So I would just say cross-streaming is the best way of mentoring people. I think ultimately writing and creating essays and video essays is an efficient way to do that. That's probably the best way to get your ideas out there. But when it comes to just being in a community and generating community, the live stream, there's no replacement for that. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this weekly live stream regularly is straight up, I just want to foster community. And I think that the live stream is the way to mentor this. I will say in passing, I know you were at the event. We need more real life events. And I know for myself, it's kind of been a rough month or two. I've been very busy at work and in real life things. So I've been kind of flagging on that front, but that we kind of saw mentorship in real life at the Sildings event. And I'm kind of convinced that's the future of everything. And once we get that in play, I can't believe Philos gave me a video to watch, and I was sick as a dog when he sent it to me. And he's one of the content creators that I streamed with a few weeks ago and was also at the event. And I was going to promote his content, and I was just so sick I forgot. But thank you very much for the reminder, Traditionalist. Thank you very much. Aaron was, of all the people who were sort of part of that second wave of NRX, Aaron really found his niche on Twitter. And it's funny because I hated Twitter. I was never good at it. But it just shows you. And I don't feel the reason why Aaron is really good at Twitter isn't that he's gotten a lot of traction, which he has. It's not even that he's sort of broken through to the normicons, which he also has. He's actually done a lot of inroads to people like Tim Pool, to Mark Hemingway, which are exactly the kind of people that we want to be reaching out to. When I did that back in 2018, I got the door slammed in my face. Probably because of internet blood sports and the bad reputation that the online right was getting. But Aaron McIntyre has been able to really reach out to those people in his Twitter account. But it's neither his overall follower count nor his inroads into the normicons that have really impressed me. Rather, it's the fact that I don't feel he's lost himself to Twitter. When Millennial Woes was on Twitter, it was I felt bad for him because it was really obvious that he was addicted. And the fact that he reacted so he reacted so badly to getting banned from Twitter, which was very predictable, and indicated that it was an addiction. And the thing is, I don't think Aaron, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that when Aaron gets banned, and he might still get banned, even with Musk at the head of Twitter, maybe he'll react poorly too. I reacted poorly when I lost my Discord server. These things always hurt. But I don't get the sense that he's really become addicted to Twitter. And that's very rare. I was addicted to Twitter, and I hated the thing. I wasn't enjoying it at all. I still got addicted to it. It is an addictive thing. And the fact that Aaron is able to use it relatively unscathed I feel like he's kind of the Frodo Baggins of Twitter. Like, it still corrupts him, but it corrupts him a lot less than all of us. So he has to hold the ring of power of Twitter. Maybe he can cast it back into the fires of Mount Doom, which I assume are Silicon Valley. Okay, so I already asked that aristocratic owl tweet. Those 3 aristocratic owl tweets I've already answered. Okay. Antimatter Bone Crusher. I love the name. Antimatter Bone Crusher for $10, I think. I felt you and Aaron were far too dour. The right has a lot of positive momentum now. Reality itself has left in total narrative collapse. Like if Roe v. Wade goes back to the states, that's stealing the untouchable jewel from the crown, no? No, Roe v. Wade isn't the untouchable jewel from the crown. As a matter of fact, if Roe v. Wade goes down now and states start illegalizing abortion, I hope they do because I think abortion's murder. But insofar as power goes, that actually will leave the right far weaker because it will get a lot of people pissed off, and it will create a lot of enemies for the right that it didn't have before. So most people, I think, in their heart of hearts, know abortion is murder. There's not a doubt in my. We wouldn't be having this conversation as a society if like 60 to 70% of the people in this country didn't believe abortion was murder. The problem is that the sexual culture that we've promoted and that we've taught our professional class to have since like 1968 has been basically, it's not even premarital sex. It's extramarital sex. It's sex while dating. It's like third date sex. It's like sex as an indication that you're now an item, that you're going steady. Like, I grew up in a blue state or a blue city, and that was basically the default. The default assumption was people who are over the age of 20 who are attached. You just assume that that if they're a boyfriend and girlfriend, they're intimate, right? Birth control's got it only has 98% effectiveness. So if you're and people are at their peak fertility in these years. And, this is it basically creates a demand and a need for abortion. And so if the culture isn't changed and abortion Roe v. Wade just goes down, it creates a problem because it's a partial use of power. The and people on the stream with R, and they also said something like, well, Twitter is the crown jewel of the leftist social media domination, and we're just taking it out. No, there's three crown jewels of the left's domination of our country. One, two, three. And one or all of these have to go down before any kind of massive narrative shift can change, or before the right even considers itself to be in power. Those three crown jewels are the State Department and all its embassies and all its international outreach departments that basically create avenues for them to recruit people from other countries to come over and create a counter elite in this country, and also creates the foreign policy. The State Department, I would also throw in maybe a few other departments in the federal bureaucracy, but mainly the State Department. The legacy and prestige media, along with all the publishing houses, so the New York Times, Penguin, the San Francisco Chronicle, the people who publish what is fit to be printed, and then the university system. And here I mean all of it, but I mainly mean the elite schools, the Berkeleys, the Stanfords, the Harvards, the flagship state universities like University of Michigan, University of Wisconsin, that whole system of academics and its international tendrils. Those are the three power centers. If you're not disrupting those power centers, all you're doing is sort of pissing the cathedral off. And hey, go ahead if you can do it. But Roe v. Wade goes down. That doesn't make future victories for you easier. It makes future victories for you harder. Because now the pro-choice side's going to fight even harder. And there's going to be a lot of examples of malfeasance that are going to fuel them in this endeavor. So I would bring Roe v. Wade down out of moral obligation because I feel that the practice of abortion is child murder. But I'm under no illusion that this is going to do a death blow to the left. The total narrative collapse of the left is a problem. And it's a problem for them recruiting young men in particular. But really not a problem. It's a problem for them recruiting competent and independently minded young men. That's what the total narrative collapse is creating a problem for right now. As the narrative continues to collapse, it will cause a problem for them with other demographics. So they've lost independent-minded young white men, for the most part, in the Zoomers and the Alphas, and some of the millennial generation. The next rung is going to be white women and Asian men, and the next rung after that's going to be Asian women, and it goes down from there, right? The more you have to lose, the more independent you are as a community. The less dependent you are on the cathedral's money, the more narrative collapse is going to be a problem for you. Because as we know, if you have money, you don't need to make sense. And especially if you're getting money from a source, then you don't need it to make sense. Money is... When you think of money and power, you can use money and power to paper over narrative collapse for a time. And if you have enough of it, the problem is that in the long term, you never do have enough of it. And so eventually your narrative collapse gets worse and worse and worse, and there's not enough money to pay off everyone you need to. But this collapse is going to happen very, very slowly. So by all means, we should try to capitalize on the narrative collapse by trying to recruit more people into positions that are against the cathedral. But this is not the untouchable jewel. The untouchable jewel are those three institutions I mentioned. And those things are fortified left, right, and center. The left knows that those are their balls, and they're not going to let the right just walk up there and kick them in it. Which is also why the sort of student debt crisis is so hard for the right to actually address. Because the student debt crisis, as it's currently framed, is let's give more money to the universities to bail, almost as like a ransom to bail out America's young upper middle class people that have graduated from university with debt they can't pay back. But That being said, there's no reason to be dour. I mean, in some ways, it's optimistic, right? Like you have this expansion opportunity to go out and recruit excited young people who are feeling independent are the people who are going to be listening right now. And increasingly, it's going to go from young men to be young men and young women. I think, especially with this trans stuff, I think young women might be a little bit more amenable to hearing different messages. But I could be wrong about that. Well, I could be wrong about the extent of that. It certainly is true to a certain degree. Glow in the Dark for $3 USA. Which books would you recommend as a must-read for the right, or as a place to start so they can build a better understanding of the positions proposed by the right and the left or basic philosophy? So, the problem with book recommendations is who? So if you just want to, like, the little 30-page book you can read on politics, you can read Machiavelli. And that's a classic. Machiavelli's The Prince. And that's a classic, and it's real politics. It's dark. It's a dark book. But you could, if you want to get a deep understanding of political philosophy, you can read Aristotle, which is not for the faint of heart, and I highly recommend doing it as a group. But let's be honest, if you give a normie con who has trouble getting through Fellowship of the Ring, Aristotle's Politics, they're not going to know what to do with it. They're not going to get anything out of that book. I mean, I think, this is the thing. I mean, Mencius Mollbug, who's or Curtis Yarvin, who's an influence on me, he was basically a summarizer of people like Carlyle and de Juvenal and Burnham and the other. It's sort of funny. I kind of was very aware of Pareto as a statistician for my own professional work, but I never had really read him. And I was aware of these people. I think I might have even read Sam Francis, and I certainly had read The Prince, and I read right-wing. I read what would ordinarily be considered right-wing literature and things like G.K. Chesterton. But I hadn't really this all seemed sort of abstract to me. I was under the impression that this was how things operate in a state of nature. I didn't see how it applied to the world that we live in right now. And so what Yarvin did was he illustrated how the modern political theory that you learn about in college is just absolutely, it has zero explanation as to what's actually going on in the world we live in. And the sort of Italian elitist school does have a very, if you pose it in the right way and show where power actually lies, the Italian elitist school, the Machiavellian schools have very accurate understandings of how our world operates and, in my opinion, very accurate predictions. Obviously, when I say Machiavelli, I'm purely referring to him as a descriptive author. By no means adopt Machiavelli as a moral teacher or as a prescriptive author. Think of Machiavelli as political physics and not what a just prince should do. And as a palate cleanser, you could always read Frederick the Great's The Anti-Machiavel, which is, I don't know, I read it and it was all right, but he basically tries to refute Machiavelli by outlining what an ideal prince would be, and I think he kind of understands that he's not understanding political realism, but at the same time, he does have, he might not understand political realism, he does have a very exquisite understanding of the true implications of sovereignty. And so it might be worth reading for that. So, where was I? Okay, books. I mean, if I were to give a book to anybody, like this, if you were to tell me like one book that you could hand to anybody, it would probably be G.K. Chesterton's Orthodoxy. As for Italian elitism, I just don't. I mean, unless someone comes up, I am someone who's known for making explainer videos of this stuff. I don't think that this is really meant for sort of a normie audience, so I wouldn't recommend it. Obviously, if we're talking about a non-normie audience, then James Burnham's The Machiavellians is a good place to start. But no, James Burnham's The Machiavellians, it's not like it's not some basis of philosophy the way that Aristotle or Machiavelli is. It's not, it's not the foundations. It's sort of a summary and a clarification of what the author actually believes is the case about politics. So, glow in the dark, that's a hard question to answer. I really think that for most people, they don't want, most people don't want to actually talk about politics. They want religion. When I think about most of these women who are screeching over whatever political issue is the current thing, these women, they don't want to be doing politics. They want to have a religion. They want to have a set of firm beliefs that they can cherish and that they can use to undergird a community. And for women in particular, the thing that they want from a belief system more than anything else is they want the belief system to make promises and keep promises to them. Which for women is very important, as it needs to be for them more than men. This is just a constitution based on the role that they fulfill in families. Women need to be able to receive a promise and truly believe it. And the problem is that realistic politics does not give that to people. It gives sort of a very bleak view of the universe, a very bleak view of political reality. That's not what most normal people want to understand. And they want to have the religion. So for most people, what I just want to tell them is I want to tell them that I want to put it very basic. Like the thing you need to focus on is your religious beliefs, your people, and your personal moral constitution, your community, your religion, your moral constitution. That should guide what defines you in terms of belief. When it comes to seizing power at a high level, if you want to understand the physics of that, you're going to have to go to a dark place. And it's not going to be a place that many people want to go, and it's not going to be a place where you can moralize about. But, it's only for the few. And so for most people, I would direct them to something like orthodoxy or Dostoevsky, because I think that they should be directed towards the deep and good things like religion. And that's not to put down religion. I feel like when I say that, I feel like people are like, oh, it's just religion. It's just that's what the normies get. Like they get religion because they can't handle politics. That's bullshit. Religion is more important than politics, and it's more true than politics. It's deeper than politics. Politics is what we do so that we can do religion without harassment, so that we can have a church and a people that carry forward into the future. And so it's more important than politics. It's just less sexy. And in some sense it's also, I guess it's less dangerous too, right? Well, sometimes. But I think most people who are normies just won't have religion. I hope that answered the question. Glow in the dark, it's a pretty big one. Hunger counts. I don't know if you are Hunger the Dye Merchant, but welcome nonetheless. But Hunger counts for 3 USA says, clear them out, clear them out, clear them out. Got to clear them out. You got to clear them out as well. There needs to be a new start. Okay, I got to do the Jonathan Bowden impression. Clear them out, clear them out, clear them out. You got to clear them out as well. You got to clear them all out. There's got to be a new start. Is that good for the Bowden impersonation? For those of you who don't recognize this in the audience, academic agents, he was asked to summarize the unifying idea on the right, and the best he could come up with was this expression that the English nationalist, I don't even know what to call him. I think he was a writer. The English nationalist writer Jonathan Bowden was very fond of always saying, we need to clear them out, by which he meant the current ruling class. And academic agent's idea was that this was the unifying idea of the right, was just clear them out. We need to have a circulation of elites. And sure, there's a little more to it than that, but at this stage in our development, that's what unifies us. Now I think there's the immediately deeper thing, and I mentioned this at the Sildings conference as well. I intend to write some blog posts on this when I finally get around to it, presumably after I no longer sick. The most important thing for the right is this concept of the mandate of heaven. And that is sort of the minimalistic standards for which a society and a rulership of a society is moral, is something that, it might not be your religion, it might not be your ethnicity, it might have bad policies on the spreadsheet in some regards, but it's not bad enough to rebel against. It's not bad enough to clear them out. So because clear them out is the principle, if that is the thesis, then the necessary reflection of that is, what needs to be synthesized is, well, to what elite would you not say clear them out? To what elite would you accept as rulers? And that's the necessary follow-up question. Ironically, Adam blocked me, and he blocked me because he kept on asking me questions about Italian elite theory, and then he compared it to his favorite selectorate theory. And I said, hey, Adam, this is too long for a Twitter argument. Let's just set up a live stream, and we can compare and contrast Italian elitism to the selectorate theory. And then he just blocked me. It told a very delicious story, but oh no, I'm getting called to the floor. Wait, why is this not appearing? Okay, here we go. Okay, well, here's a great question. How could you not mention, so this is on the previous question over the WASP authors of, the WASP authors of America. Now, this is good, Nerve AMV Maker, because I didn't mention these three authors, even though I love them, because I do not agree that these are eligible candidates for the previous question. Nerve AMV Maker says, on the question over WASP writers, how could you not mention Faulkner, O'Connor, McCarthy, Absalom, and the Violet Barraway and the Border Trilogy are better than Moby Dick, Huck Finn, and the Great Gatsby? Yeah, they also aren't what most people mean by WASPs. Most people, when they say WASPs, they mean Northern authors. Now, you might be white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, and Southern, but nobody means Southern authors when they say WASPs. When people say WASPs, they mean people from the North. Oh, and you think you have caught me. Well, if it's not people from the South, then why did you mention Huck Finn and Samuel Clemens, who is a Southerner? I actually don't think of Samuel Clemens as a Southerner. He does not have that sensibility. In Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, he kind of communicates the Southern motifs. But I think he spent most of his life in San Francisco. He was a globetrotter. When you mention Faulkner, O'Connor, and Cormac McCarthy, you're talking about the Southern Gothic tradition, which is a very deeply Southern, deeply Gothic, and deeply grotesque genre of American literature. Most people do not consider Gothic, grotesque medieval Catholic moral tales as WASP. So I did not consider these people eligible. They're also of a particular tradition. This is what you've listed here, and maybe I'm forgetting an author. I guess you could throw in Wendell Berry, or who was the more Lost in the Cosmos? God, I need to look this up. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna remember this the second I type it in. Oh, Walker Percy. You could throw in Wendell Berry and Walker Percy, but that's basically the Southern Gothic tradition, and I don't consider it really an American tradition. I mean, it's an American tradition insofar as that it exists on the North American continent in the United States, but to me, it almost feels like a sub-American tradition. Like we could talk about, like Native American poetry traditions, or things like that, or bluegrass music, or it's regional. So that's why I didn't mention it. So there's two questions. Okay, so Nerve and VMaker asked the same thing twice, but thank you very much. And by the way, guys, if I will say this, Nerve and VMaker, I actually prefer Wiseblood to The Violent Bear It Away. I thought The Violent Bear It Away was definitely O'Connor's lesser of the two novels. Wiseblood, I would recommend, if anyone wants a strange and challenging book about Christianity, read Wiseblood. It will blow your mind. Yeah. Most people will not perceive it as a Christian book, but it's a great one. Indie for $3 USA. It's KJV Pictures on YouTube. King James Version Pictures on YouTube is awesome. Art style isn't what you asked, but it's independent, one guy, and very well done. His testimony videos are awesome too. Well, I'll check that out later. Thank you so much for the recommendation, Indy. I'm going to lose my voice in probably short order, so I will have to be careful about how I manage my time. Antimatter Bone Crusher for $3 USA. Following up on right-wing positives, I think the current path forward is a return to federalism. So send everything back to the states. Formalize what's already happening with anti-abortion COVID CRT laws and build right-wing communities and values. Okay, so the problem with federalism is that the energy it takes to implement federalism is equivalent to the energy it would take to install a king that just does all the right-wing stuff and crushes the left with one decisive blow. And by king, I'm using it loosely. I could mean like an FDR, right? The problem with federalism is that you have to be on a federal level to implement federalism. And when you implement federalism, you're giving up money and power, which means that every time you do a federalism, you have less money to reward your friends and allies in the very institution where you're trying to create that federalized system. So this is what I call a Bell the cat problem. So there's this famous Aesop's fable where there's this cat, and the cat obviously eats the mice, and it's a big problem. So the mice all get together and they ask, well, how can we handle this cat? What can we do about it? And then one mouse says, I've got a great idea. Let's put a bell around the cat's neck. And therefore, when the cat comes, the bell will ring and we'll be able to run away. And it will be a perfect solution. And everyone thinks this is a great solution. And then one of the older mice says, well, how are you going to get a bell around the cat's neck? If you could successfully get a bell around the cat's neck, you could also successfully hang the cat, right? So it's a hype. It is true that federalism would be a hypothetical solution, but it's a solution that it's not implementable short of a radical change to how the political order is done in this country. So the issue is that and that this is true, like federalism has been decreasing it's been decreasing since the Civil War, at least. Maybe since something like, probably even before that, since Andrew Jackson, but definitely since the end of the Civil War, and sharply since the New Deal, and so federalism. Even, and I don't want to put. I think you have a good idea. Like I like the idea of dividing everything up. Like that's a great endpoint. But the problem is that federalism has to be an endpoint. It cannot be a first step. It cannot be the way you do things, because we know from experience, from 200 years of experience, that this is not the way the federal government wants to move naturally. In fact, it naturally moves the other way and naturally becomes more centralized and not more federalized. So, but thank you very much for the question. If I had my druthers, I would obviously federalize everything, and we would have a blue state and we would have a red state, and I'm sure it would be awesome. Okay, so Cinder Mountain. We just select this. Oops. Cinder Mountain Villager. For $25 USA. Would you be interested in starting a curated Discord for fiction writers? So I don't use Discord because I've been continuously banned from Discord. At this moment, they could ban me and take down my servers for evading a ban on their services. So I really, really, really don't like Discord. I think it's a great idea. I would love to do fiction writing. The problem also is I don't have enough time to like proofread people's fiction or to help them on that. First of all, I'm not a fiction writer, really. For a brief time between my PhD being done and me starting a job and starting a family, I did try to help people out with their writing, but it's time consuming, and I barely have enough time to keep my Substack going and these weekly live streams going with a job and the family. So it's a very good idea, but I would love to be a participant in that idea. But I obviously can't do it on Discord, because if I get prominent on Discord, I'll likely get banned again. So someone else will have to do that. B, why would you even do it on Discord? Right? Well, if this is a fiction writing forum, Discord is the reason why it's dominant is that everyone's on it. But if this is for fiction writers, they're already putting effort into doing this thing. So why wouldn't you use something that's more open and friendly? To me, either Telegram or the Matrix servers like Element would be a better bet. But I like the idea. I am dying to read fiction. I can't wait till the Passage Prize gets published. And next time I have some money in my pocket, I'm going to be looking for some books from Imperium Press. I don't know if they do fiction, but I'm a little bit tired of reading political treatises. So I wouldn't mind reading something, a good piece of fiction or a short story. Thank you very much for the super chat, though. Okay, Takar for $25 USA. Assuming the 3 organs at the cathedral that you mentioned recede significantly, to what extent do you think women's sexual liberation will also recede? If they keep access to the job market and private property, I'm not sure how this could happen. Well, I mean, women's sexual liberation, I think it's naturally going to recede. To be honest, be honest, I mean, it depends what you're talking about. So what's going to happen is not going to be, this is something we need to really kind of keep in mind here, is that I think that looking at women's sexual liberation is just not what we want we don't want to think this way, right? So imagine that you're in an African American community in the 70s, and you're going to experience what basically a collapse of the sexual marketplace for marriage. But part of this community is going to be Muslim, and part of this community is going to be completely irreligious. Well, if you go through the 70s that way, what you'll see is that the non-religious side will completely collapse, whereas the religious side might even get more conservative. And so when we talk about what we need going forward, is we're not really interested in the entirety of women. We're just interested in the virtue of a small subset of women who are part of our actual community. And to be quite honest, I think more and more women will be looking at what the present world has to offer them and seriously wondering if there isn't more, and what the real fruits are of the sexual revolution. This is already happening. People are already commenting on it. And will this get you most women? No, probably not, but it might get you a good 30%. And that's all you really need. The rest of the mainstream culture, the post-sexual revolution, humanity, does not reproduce itself. So we have to be aware of that community, but we don't really have to interact with it, nor do we have to be concerned that sexual liberation is running rampant inside a population that we're not interested in. And I don't really care if the Castro district wants to have, the polymorphous perversity of the prophesized by someone like, what is her face? Judith, what's her face? I'm totally drawing a blank on it. But I don't care if they want to completely express that. All I care about is that there is an alternative. And eventually the alternative will win out. Because something that cannot go on forever will inevitably stop. Cinder Mountain Villager for $50 USA. Wow, thank you. That's very generous. Are there those among us who are the alt-right? And how do we organize? Well, yeah, there are a bunch of people who are doing this right now. The most prominent ones I can think of is my friend, I don't really know him that well, but he was just doing a stream today. He does the Break the Rules podcast. It's Geo. I don't know what the name of his channel is. Let me check here. Just see if I can capture his Giovanni Geo Art Productions is his channel. He's a great guy, and he does art and art promotion. There's also, on the fiction side, there are people like Zero H.P. Lovecraft and the Passage Prize. They're organizing a bunch of stuff. On the graphic novels side, there are people like Owen Cyclops. And there are a lot of people who are doing art right now on the right wing. And the art right has been an expression for quite some time. I'm not really aware of sort of the hubs where people meet and where they trade tips and stuff like that. That's to be quite honest, I had this period in 2017 and 2018 where whenever there was a new community of right-wingers, I was there and I was talking to them. But then I got married and had a kid, right? And I've got like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day max to do this blogging stuff. So I can't spend hours on Discord anymore. That's just not my life. And so I feel bad, Cinder Mountain, because I can tell you to look into Giant Art Productions and Geo from Break the Rules. And I can tell you to look into the Passage Prize and Zero H.P. Lovecraft, and those are who I usually call the art right. But I can't tell you where they meet for drinks because I don't get the invitations. Oh, another one, the Beautiful Toilet podcast. Curtis Yarvin was on the Beautiful Toilet. I was on the Beautiful Toilet. I don't know the guy's name, and I feel like if I tell you his name, I'll be doxing him. But the producer of the Beautiful Toilet podcast is a wonderful poet, also also a journalist. He has a wonderful podcast. He has many guests on, many artists, film producers that are right-wingers that have appeared on his podcast that are sympathetic, not necessarily right-wingers. Some of them are post-leftists. Some of them are, materialist Marxists that just don't like the modern progressivism. But he also has a wonderful podcast that brings together a lot of people in that dimension. At the Sildings event, there was a whole group of people who were pretty exclusively talking about this direction. I'm not equipped right now to plug you into where you can meet those people. I'm sure if you go to those podcasts, there'll be more people who will be able to give you more direct information. But thank you very much. I hope that helps. All right, Hunger. This time I recognize this is Hunger, the Dye Merchant. And he says, for $5 USA, random question. What are your thoughts on Elden Ring? And does the propagation of the fantasy genre, high or low, help the right in a concrete way? Well, all I know about Elden Ring is that my brother likes Elden Ring. I'm aware that it's gothic, and if there's anything that's gothic, I really like it. For instance, I didn't play this because I don't really play video games anymore because I don't have the time. All my non-work, non-family time is consumed either by the blog or by the wife or by other nerdy hobbies that are not digital that I'm embarrassed about. So I don't play digital nerd hobbies because I cherish my nerd time as being discreetly not digital. But I'm all over. I've seen clips of Elden Ring. I've really liked them. Of all the gothic fantasy video games, I've kind of liked Diablo the most because of the nostalgia for Diablo 2. And I saw that it had a re-rendition. I watched the remastering of the video clips, which are just delicious. They use the same audio. You can watch the Diablo video stories that they rated, and the voice acting holds up. It's very delicious. It feels like an actual movie. Better than most stuff that they were doing in video games, even when I stopped playing video games in 2013. I'm just going to respond to this as if you asked me about Dark Souls. I would say that Dark Souls is, like 40K, because it's gothic, and also because Dark Souls is Spenglerian. I'm saying this only knowing Dark Souls from what Fritz Imperial has explained to me like 2 years ago. But it's gothic, it's Spenglerian, it's dark fantasy. So I mean, it's full of very, very deep right-wing concepts. So that's fantastic. But I guess my big problem with it is that it's just the genre. It's the video game genre. There's something that is very difficult, to do. This is the funny thing. I mean, this is, I'm going to go to Morgoth here, and Sargon. So I saw someone with an @reply ask me about Sargon's 40K stream, and 40K has been a game instead of video games for like years and years and years and years and years. But it's only become a cultural artifact insofar as the right wing has been concerned about it, insofar as the novelization has gone. And it's kind of stupid because the novels are complete crap. The Horus Heresy novels, they're a guilty pleasure. I do love them. And they're super manly and super pulp. A lot of Conan the Barbarian vibes there. A lot of gothic deliciousness, men being men, but they're pretty poorly written, right? They're pretty schlocky. But even though the novels are literally derivative to the video games and the tabletop games and the comic art and the literal figurines that people paint, but even though the novels are completely derivative, the fact that it's in print somehow makes the Horus heresy more accessible to being discussed in terms of ideas. So I can talk about Horus Lupercal because he's in a book. I can't talk about Horus Lupercal like the 2-inch hard plastic miniature, or I can't talk about Horus Lupercal, the video game character. I will say this definitively about, and this people really underestimate this, and it sounds so shallow, right? Because when I was a kid, I was really into graphic novels, like Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, and I was like, oh man, people are so biased against genres. They're so biased against graphic novels. Why can't a graphic novel be art? Well, this is what people don't understand. The medium matters. It really does. It really, really, really matters. And even so far as that Warhammer 40K needed to become a novelization of a board game, which is like, when you think about it, like, that's like the lowest of the low in terms of how you get to this story. It's literally a novelization of action figures. But still, the fact that it's in print means that it can be commented on. And so Morgoth and I can have an extended discussion about comparing the treachery of Horus Lupercal to von Stauffenberg and Cassius and Brutus, and that makes sense because it's in print. So I would say that I'm sure the Elden Ring is great, but the problem is, I think, the medium. Okay, I have officially run out of voice. I'm gonna get through the super chats, don't worry, but I'm gonna completely destroy my voice if I don't quit. Ordinarily, if this were a stream where I wasn't overcoming my corona or whatever this is, I would go much longer because these questions are great, guys. But I'm gonna be sensitive to this and just answer the remaining ones you guys have and then call tonight. So thank you very much. Son of a Glitch for $5 USA. Dave, be happy. It's the year of the Chud. Huh. It's the year of the Chud, bud. Energy is coming our way, and it's going to keep coming. Wow, thanks, Son of a Glitch. That feels like I'm reading my horoscope. Faith is usually fallacious, but it works if you maintain it. Anyway, best solution for the NRX is to influence culture, is becoming sci-fi authors and writing about bad and dark progressive futures. Prove me wrong. Well, yeah, I think that becoming sci-fi authors and writing stories is not a bad idea at all. I will totally buy your books if they come out in print. I really love listening to podcasts while I'm doing my workouts. I really love listening to live streams when I'm doing chores. And every now and again, except if I'm doing like if I'm driving across the United States and I'm in my car, this is the one exception. But I can't multitask when I'm listening to narrations of fiction. My brain doesn't work like that. I have to be literally doing something like driving an automatic car to do that. So, I will read Wards of Ency, which is the Franklin's novel, when it comes out in print. It will come out eventually, I'm sure. But before then, I will look forward to reading your guys' reactionary fiction as it's published, starting with the Passage Prize. One thing I would say, though, is that I think that, I don't know, I think dystopias, the thing is that the closer to realism you get, the more dangerous your fiction is. The greatest sci-fi book or work that came out that's plausibly right wing of my generation has been Fight Club. And that's because it was the closest to realism. And I'm somebody who's very conducive to writing sci-fi and fantasy. But by all means write fantasy. It's been a very long time since I've read a fantasy book that I've really felt like I've enjoyed. And maybe I'm not really a big fantasy reader, so. But is this Year of the Chud? Is Year of the Chud this year's White Boy Summer? I think that White Boy Summer would be, I think that people actually have to start they have to actually get together more. Like, everyone feels that we're springing back, that we're getting better, but this needs to be more in real life. And the more that we make this in real life, the more realistic this prophecy will be. Sam for $5 USA. Let's see if I can highlight that. He says, enjoying the stream. Cheers. Well, thank you very much. That's the last super chat I think I have. Yep. My voice is almost gone, so thank you so much for all the super chats. I will answer the remaining of the questions, and then maybe some of the replies. American Populist. I'm not so sure why my super chat isn't showing up. Okay, well I'll just highlight this. Oh, wait. So how did I not see this then? It was literally a super chat that didn't show up. Well, okay. I mean, I'll answer it if. Okay. Okay, so American Populist for $5 USA. In case it doesn't show up, how do we remain optimistic in starting a family with the economic situation for the middle class declining and good job opportunities becoming harder to find? Well, you're asking the wrong person, because before this stream, I was, giving my son his bath, and he's just so happy. He's such a happy kid. And my mother tells me that when I was his age, I was that happy. And she always asks me, what happened? why are you so pessimistic as an adult? Now that when you're such a happy kid. And I have this problem where I look at my son when I was sleeping, and I kind of get really unhappy that he's not going to have the same opportunities I had, and even I didn't have the same opportunities that I think my father had. And I mean, I had a lot of opportunities, so I'm not complaining, right? I had much more opportunities than my grandfather had. My grandparents' lives was destroyed by the war, and they didn't get great opportunities when they came to Canada either. So we are historically privileged. My wife tells me I should be more optimistic because my pessimism betrays faith. So the Space Marines, fear betrays faith, pessimism betrays faith. Yeah, but Space Marines know no fear and feel no pain, which is not what most mortals can experience. So I don't know. I think the thing is that we have to be optimistic. We have to will optimism. I don't think that things are ever going to get so bad that there will never be space for happiness or hope. And the worst thing we can do is be so pessimistic that we don't actually have families because we're worried about them not having opportunities. We have a long way to fall before my son has to experience anything as bad as my grandparents did. We have a long way to fall before my son has to experience anything to the extent that people in the Middle Age, people in the Dark Ages experienced, and that puts things in perspective. Pessimism does betray faith in a lot of ways. My wife's right about that, but I don't know if I, at this moment, have a good story to tell you about how emotionally to make that make sense. I think the thing is just that to remind yourselves, like, even if your children don't have the opportunities you have, what they will have is that, you're not going to sit idly by like the boomers are, right? If when your children have worse opportunities, you're going to be right there with them saying, don't worry about it. This is not an indication of your worth. Your worth is your community. Your worth is what you do for your people. Your worth is what God says your worth is. That's where you put your faith, not in the professional opportunity that didn't materialize, not in the payback for an education that never came, not in this debt that you have. We're going to deal with this together. We're going to come through it together, and we're going to carry on the future of our family and the future of our faith, regardless of what boondoggles have been taken away from us. Like I don't know, like vacations. This is probably bad for me because I was already hated vacations. But maybe we don't go to Europe. To be quite frank, Europe isn't what it used to be. I, as a young child, I spent a year in England, in a suburb of Oxford. And it was, actually maybe it was nearer to London, come to think of it, but it was somewhere in there. And going back to England several years ago, England's not looking very English anymore. So maybe we have to say goodbye to those things. But that's not what really matters. That's not what really should give us worth. And when we put things in that perspective, I think things feel a lot different. So I'm going to go for 5 minutes more because, man, my voice is going. I'll just scroll up and see what the at replies have said. Do you think... someone says, do you think it's better to say that most women don't want politics, they want polity? Most women want a community. I think there are some exceptions. There's some people, there's some women. My wife is more of a loner. But even her, they really want a community to be part of. So that's not a bad thing to say. But all women, I really think that the irreligious person is a misnomer. I think there's very few people, someone's correcting me here, Judith Butler, that was the Judith I was thinking of before. But I think very few people can thrive without religion. And I think of that percentage, it's even a smaller number of women. There are very few genuine atheists, and there are almost no genuine female atheists. Almost no is, obviously, a very small percentage across the half of the species that is women. Probably there's quite a few people in that category. But it's a very small percentage of people. So women very much like community and promises that can be made and kept. So, yeah, everyone's correcting me on the Judith question. I don't see very many actual chats here. So I'm looking at the at replies. All I'm getting is people correcting me on what I should have been saying. I want to answer one more question. I don't know. Well, maybe I'll just close it here. And since I can't actually find any more questions, when am I going to do another Trad Codex? Well, I can't answer that question because the last Trad Codex got delayed due to the birth of my son. And I've gotten an unending amount of shit for that. But I'll try. Anyway, guys, it's getting late and I'm way over time anyway. This is supposed to be a shorter sunset stream. So as per usual, this will stay up for 24 hours. The Adam and Stitch one I kept on for the entire week. So, but this will stay up for 24 hours, and then afterwards you'll be able to find it on Odyssey. And if that's, I think that's everything for tonight. So I'll say good night, God bless, and I will see you next week.